Welcome back, everyone. This is Shields, and today we are going to react to why didn't the U.S. annex the Yucatan Peninsula? Knowledgia just came out with this video, so we had to hop on it. We had to react and watch and learn together. So that's, if you're new here, that's what we do. I sound a little funny. I have like an ulcer in my tongue. That's TMI, but just letting you guys know ahead of time. But anyway, why did the U.S. annex the Yucatan Peninsula? Well, when did they have an opportunity to? Was it the Spanish-American War? That's the only thing I can really think of. You know, after we, got, there was the Cuban situation as well as the Texas situation, Arizona, New Mexico becomes part of the United States. Why wasn't the Yucatan Peninsula? Like, when were they available to be even gotten from the Spanish? I think that's what we're going to learn today. So sit back, relax, and let's react and learn together.
Why didn't the U.S. annex the Yucatan Peninsula? The Yucatan Peninsula was once home to the Great Maya civilization.
Yeah, but a long time ago. Not relevant to the United States, but very important for context. So this is the pre-colonialism of the New Spain, is what they called it.
And since then has fallen under the control of the Spanish Empire, the Mexican Empire, and the modern Republic of Mexico. But for a few strange weeks, a series of strange and bloody circumstances made it so that this ancient land nearly became a new addition to the United States of America. Also, this is very interesting. I've been seeing a lot of things going around lately since, Trudeau. If you guys are caught up in modern politics and modern, current events, Trudeau visit Mar-a-Lago, Dr. Trump had a little couple words about Canada, and then there was this whole thing like the American Empire, blah, 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 where there was going to be like some sort of imperialistic take on North America. That's not going to happen. We're not going to take Iceland. We're not going to take Canada. We're definitely not going to take the Yucatan Peninsula. These are sovereign nations that own these territories. However, it's always interesting. So let's back up a little bit. Why did the Yucatan Peninsula come up for grabs? So that this ancient land nearly became a new addition to the United States of America. This strange story is befitting of a strange region. The Yucatan had long been a hard and deadly frontier for the European colonists. The difficult terrain with few navigable rivers and an abundance of disease was tough for the Europeans to live in, while the scattered native Maya fiercely defended their independence well into the 17th century. When Spain finally did establish some control, that control was weak, with local elites known as hidalgos retaining significant
Hidalgo. That's why we see Hidalgo in so many places, like in terms of city names. Okay.
In power, far from central government oversight. The Yucatan briefly saw independence as a republic in 1823, after Mexico's successful war for independence from Spain. But within months, it chose to join Mexico. Mexico sent a governor to Yucatan, but functionally, the local hidalgos and other elites continued to enjoy a lot of freedom. This was not a
I guess without taxation, right?
Privilege extended to the native Maya.
Okay, hold on. Maya population Yucatan. This is 1823. 2.1 million people and 10,000 Maya laborers were exploited and oppressed. Okay.
Maya, who faced heavy discrimination and oppression in law, politics, work, and social life. Their lives were little better than slavery on European or mestizo plantations, as their language, culture, and people were marginalized and erased. Eventually, in 1841, the Yucatecan nobles decided that Mexico's oversight was too much and declared their independence again.
But Mexico didn't recognize that, did they?
Mexico was facing a cascade of problems at the time, including the control of Texas and attempted internal coups, which led to the toppling of President Anastasio Bustamante by Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna. Santa Anna initially tried to negotiate with this new Yucatecan republic, but when those negotiations went nowhere, he resorted to military options.
And this is very similar to, there's like an isolated, well, it's not that similar, but it's got like a similar ending to it. When there was like this little area above Vermont, I believe, that was fought between after the French sold this territory, the Louisiana Purchase, and they had been defeated. It was the territory, I believe it's right above Vermont, like I said. And there's a river, there's two little rivers, and this basically became no man's land. And Canada fought over this land, America fought over this land, and eventually we just went and occupied it, and that was the end of it. I'm guessing this is how this ended.
Santa Anna seized Ciudad de Carmen, crippling trade access to the Yucatan, and sent an army onto the peninsula. However, the Republic had already raised an army thousands of men strong, almost all of them Maya, which forced the Mexican forces to withdraw and begrudgingly accept its autonomy. Still, within Yucatan, there was a lot of disagreement over what should be done.
So this isn't part of history, it's a blind spot to me.
The Campeche faction of Santiago Mendez generally favored union with Mexico, while the Merida faction of Miguel Barbachano was more inclined to independence. The governorship of Yucatan switched constantly between them both. Each held it 3 times, between 1841 and 1846, never for more than 18 months at a time, resulting in Yucatan lurching between reunification and independence multiple times. By late 1846, the two factions were so divided that Yucatan effectively had 2 governments at once, each with different
and that never works.
Stances on Yucatan's independence. Things got more complicated with the outbreak of the Mexican-American
I said Spanish-American, I meant Mexican-American.
War in April 1846. The more pro-unification Mendez did not want to involve the Yucatan in a war with the United States, and urged for independence and neutrality. And it was generally pro-independence Barbachano who favored sticking with Mexico. The United States decided the issue for them in October 1846, when it sent a naval force under Commodore Matthew Perry to capture Ciudad de Carmen.
Commodore Matthew Perry that's a famous name. Not the actor, but that's a famous Commodore name too. I can't remember what else he did.
And put the Yucatan under a naval blockade. Washington, it seemed, considered the Yucatan fair game. The Yucatan Republic sent an envoy to Washington in January 1847 to plead for recognition of the Republic's neutrality.
Yeah, because the United States recognizes it becomes more official. Because they're kind of on their own, right? I don't know if they've had any recognition yet.
Which was eventually accepted, although Ciudad de Carmen was not relinquished. For a moment, things looked like they might be fine, but they got a whole lot worse in July 1847, when the Yucatecan Maya, led by Manuel Antonio I. Cecily Chi and Jacinto Pat, sensing the weakness of the government, began planning a revolt. Their plan was discovered and I was executed. But
hey, you can't stage a coup, you're gonna get
his death simply made him a martyr. Chi and Pat led the Maya in an open revolt that rapidly spread across the peninsula in a new conflict known as the Caste War. Unfortunately, the Caste War
What? 50-year war?
Was the textbook definition of a race war. The Maya sought the complete expulsion of the whites by death or driving them into the sea.
Well, damn.
While the whites sought the total subjugation of the Maya and the extermination of any who would not kneel.
Okay, this is not going to go well for either party.
After executing I in the town of Tipich, the Yucatan forces, under Mendez's command, cracked down on Maya in the surrounding area, arresting and executing dozens and burning their homes. The Maya responded in kind, attacking the town in July and killing every non-Maya they found. The Maya still formed the bulk of the labor, and the military personnel on the Yucatan so quickly gained control of the rural areas, isolating the white population in the major cities. The government of Yucatan needed help, and they felt that the best place to get that was in Washington. In late 1847, Mendez's son-in-law, Justo Sierra O'Reilly, was sent as another envoy to plead for American support. O'Reilly urged the Americans to lift their tariffs and embargoes, especially on weapons. A shrewd diplomat, he also suggested that the British and the Spanish were secretly supporting the Maya, playing on American fears of European expansion in their own backyard.
Yeah, the backyard. I was about to say this place isn't too much further than Cuba.
For years now, America had operated under the Monroe Doctrine, which compelled them to oppose any further expansion of European imperial power in the Americas.
Very humble.
Raising the specter of European intervention was a clever move to force the Americans to pay attention. O'Reilly's pleas earned some sympathy, and he managed to get the tariffs and embargoes reduced. But the situation back in Yucatan was getting rapidly worse. By early 1848, the Maya had the Yucatan government on the ropes. Thousands had died between both sides, and there was a real possibility of the Maya expelling or exterminating the whites from the peninsula.
Why are we getting a zoomed out view? We about to get Europe involved? I see Spain and UK is highlighted.
Desperate, in March 1848, the Yucatecan government sent identical letters to the Americans, the British, and the Spanish. Whoever sent the Yucatan aid would be granted domination and sovereignty over the whole peninsula.
Well, damn!
Better to live as subjects to America, Spain, or Britain than to be wiped out by the Maya. Back in Washington, O'Reilly had been writing to the newspapers to publicize the plight of the Yucatan and arranging meetings with key senators and officials. He had officially secured a meeting with President Polk in April when word reached him of his government's unprecedented offer. O'Reilly was exasperated. He hated the idea on principle and was shocked at how bad the situation had become. The entire dynamic of the debate just shifted under his feet, and the news reached him only the day before he was supposed to meet the president. Polk was at least interested in the new development. The end of the Mexican-American War in February had freed up his attention, and the risk of British or Spanish expansion in the region was a big concern. Polk listened to O'Reilly intently, and less than a week later stood before Congress to plead the case for American intervention in the Yucatan.
That's very interesting.
It wasn't just about geopolitics, but a racial concern, with the president calling on Congress to vote to, quote, rescue the white race from extermination or expulsion from their country. The Yucatan bill proposed a military intervention and occupation of the Yucatan to suppress the Maya rebels and perhaps pave the way for a full annexation of the peninsula. But whatever relief O'Reilly felt when his country's issues started being taken seriously quickly evaporated. The bill immediately became a battleground for the two dominant political parties. The Democrats favored intervention, while the Whigs opposed it.
This was before the Republican Party, about another 10 years away.
Whigs argued that America had no reason to involve itself in a faraway war in the first place, and feared they would only provoke another war with Mexico.
Yeah, this is right after the Mexican-American War. People have died, territory's been claimed. How much really do we have to keep going through in terms of sacrifice?
Democrats argued it was America's duty under the Monroe Doctrine to set up before the Europeans did, and
yeah, but how much validity does the Europeans have in a continent? Never mind.
Saw parallels between Yucatan and America's own conflicts with native populations. More than anything, the Yucatan was a partisan fight. The actual issues in Yucatan were secondary. Eyes were already turning toward the 1848 presidential election, and the controversial Yucatan bill had become one of the first battlegrounds, with people on all sides bunkering down with their respective party and using the debate to smear opponents. Before long, O'Reilly's hope had turned to despair. He wrote in his diary, "The Whigs have taken their stand in the matter, and the Democrats theirs. Thus the question of Yucatan is a party question, and as such, God knows the fate that will befall it." Several weeks of chaotic...
I'm really interested to see, how does Mexico dive back into this? Does it just go to a government that feels like we're Mexico, and then there we go?
Political mudslinging occurred until news suddenly reached Washington on May 16th. The Yucatan government had just signed a peace treaty with the Maya. The war, it seemed, was over. The Yucatan bill died overnight. Keen to be rid of the political controversy around it, the Senate killed the Yucatan bill, and President Polk's interest vanished too. O'Reilly was humiliated. His warnings about the danger of the conflict now seemed like exaggerated nonsense. So sudden and so total was the abandonment of the Yucatan Bill that the same papers who had lent column space to O'Reilly's pleas weeks earlier now refused to even publish him. The treaty between the Yucatan government and the rebels.
I wonder how far, you know, like, just because a bill ends, this is what I'm thinking, guys, like, just because a bill, like, is off the table and the war is over, it's kind of like, you know, after the Emancipation Proclamation, it was still almost, you know, 100 years of, you know, issues for African Americans in the United States when it comes to segregation and, you know, lots of different things like that. So I'm wondering, since this was like a race war, were there complications from this point on between the two races, between the Maya and the non-Maya? Very curious about that.
Was broken almost immediately, but Washington's attention had already been lost by that point. The Yucatan government once again turned to Mexico City, who sent troops to suppress the rebels in exchange for the Republic rejoining the country.
Yep.
By 1849, the rebels had been pushed into the southeast of the peninsula, and the Mexican flag once again flew over it. The Caste War dragged on a similar scale until 1901, and the Yucatan remains a piece of Mexico to this day. The brief few years of its blood-soaked independence and the prospect of a United States occupation and annexation are now distant, easily forgotten anecdotes in the long history of the Yucatan Peninsula.
I just don't know where to start. Besides, like, that's just something I did not know. That's a blind spot in history for me, and there's so many blind spots in history, but specifically this one within our backyard. If you're, you know, you're from the U.S., I don't know. I mean, based on how far we went into this, I'm not sure that, you know, we would eventually. I don't think this would have ever become a territory, just because it seems like there wasn't a lot of support for it, especially since we just got out of the Mexican-American War. And also because a lot of these people that were also, it was like a 50-50 support at home and also a 50-50 support on the Yucatan. So I don't see this would, I mean, if you break those numbers down, you're at 20-ish% of the people interested now. So yeah, I don't think that we would ever have acquired the Yucatan Peninsula. But yeah, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. If you are still here, I appreciate you. And if you leave a subscribe, I'll appreciate you even more. And yeah, recommend me a video to react to and learn, and we will do that. But until next time, peace out. Bye bye.